Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Our next candidate is running for re-election to the Cambridge School Committee. David Weinstein is a first-term member of the Cambridge School Committee, running for re-election, a 20-year Cambridge resident. He has two children in the Cambridge Public Schools. David is a former classroom teacher and is assistant director of a 50-state civic education program based at Brandeis University. Please welcome to the show the one and only Mr. David Weinstein. Hey, David, how are you?
Hi, Jimmy. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. I'm sorry we're not doing it in person like last year, but like 2 years ago, but it's really fun to be here.
It's fun to have you, and thank you. Yes, CCTV couldn't do it, obviously, because of the pandemic, but we're able to work here from the Tingle Empire. So that's going pretty well. When you have an empire, David, you need to utilize it.
Yeah.
Or it just goes to waste. So, David, tell us, why are you running for Cambridge School Committee for a second term?
Well, really, I'm running for the same reasons I ran before. I'm proud of the Cambridge Public Schools, but I'm not satisfied. And we have so much in Cambridge. We have the people, the financial resources, the municipal programs, the community organizations, the innovative businesses, and no one should fall through the cracks. No one should be left to languish. And yet, racial and economic opportunity gaps persist. Children leave our schools unprepared to succeed in college and career. We're failing too many of our children. And that's why I'm running. And that's why I ran. And that's why I've worked so hard over the last 2 years and would like to continue that work.
Mm-hmm. Tell me, what are your top three? First, let me just ask you this. You said you have two children currently in the Cambridge Public Schools. What schools are they in?
My son's in fourth grade at Graham Parks.
Okay.
And my daughter is in ninth grade. So she just started at Cambridge Fringe and Latin after upper school at Vassal Lane Upper School.
Cool. Well, congratulations. My son went to Graham Parks as well. And I went to Cambridge High and Latin back in the day, David. I don't want to date myself, but back before they merged with Ringe. So yeah, it was Cambridge High and Latin at the time, but that's wonderful to know. So
well, I'm gonna let her know that you went there as well. She was looking at the list of alumni, and she was most excited to see that Walter Brennan graduated from CRLS.
Yeah, he and I were in the same class.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Let me ask you this. So tell me about your top three priorities as a school committee person.
Well, it's always health and safety and well-being of everybody in the care of the school committee, children and adult, is always the baseline priority. But clearly over the past 2 years, that's taken on different dimensions that nobody anticipated. But it's still a priority for me that we make sure that we continue to evolve our pandemic response in conjunction with the science and the situation to prioritize health and safety. And then within what we need to do in response, that we're attentive to the disparate impact of the pandemic and of some of the measures that we've had to take on different families, on different students. And that's something that I've also been paying attention to over this time. So that's one priority. My overriding priority is to close racial and economic opportunity gaps and make sure that every child in Cambridge, each and every child, gets the supports that they need to not only achieve, but to really to thrive and to find what they're going to pursue and to actually be prepared to do it. And then that includes making sure that that a child who might be struggling in some areas but is ready to go above and beyond in another actually gets those supports to go above and beyond and the push to do it, even if they don't recognize for themselves that they're ready. And that another student who might already be at that place, gets that additional boost. I think that's critical. And I have over this term, one of the things that I've done to move in that direction is really advanced conversations about what's often called an individualized student success plan model. And I connect this with also establishing a cradle to college and career ecosystem of supports for our kids and their families and caregivers. Because I don't think the problem in Cambridge is resources. I think what happens is sometimes because there are so many resources is that some kids fall through the cracks, and we shouldn't lose information about what a child needs as they go from one school to the next or as they leave the school at the end of the day, even if those supports are going to need to come in some cases from outside of the schools. We're the place. The schools, the teachers, the other adults who work with students are the outside of people's families, typically are the people who know the most about where children are and what they need. And I think we could do a better job of making sure those resources are going in the way they need to go to individual kids. One of my kids might need $10,000 worth of our annual spending. Another might need $80,000 in a given year. But it's just make sure the right is getting there.
Right. David, do you, I had this conversation with a couple of the other candidates as well about just, there's I think there's 17 schools. Do you think we will ever get to the place where it doesn't matter which neighborhood you're at, that the parent moves into wherever, Cambridgeport, North Cambridge, West Cambridge, they say, you know what, there's a neighborhood school and you can pretty much walk to it. It's less than a half a mile from your house. And the resources and the expertise and the quality of education is going to be just about the exact same as it is in Cambridgeport or it is in East Cambridge and vice versa. Is that a goal of yours, or is that something that's on the agenda or something you think we should be aspiring to?
We should absolutely aspire to making certain that all of our schools provide the same level of education and support. We do have some variation between schools. One of the most dramatic examples of that is Amigo School, for example. It's a bilingual school. Mm-hmm. Not every school is providing a bilingual education. You're not going to get that at a different school. Right. But with the exception of things like that, or maybe another school has a greater emphasis on music instruction as their tool for engaging students and for helping support them academically and socially. But every child should come out of our school system equally well prepared. And if what you're asking is, will we move to having neighborhood schools? I don't know if that's ever going to happen. I think the reason we have the controlled choice is a really important reason, to make sure that our schools, each of our schools, mirror the demographics of the city as a whole. And they're sort of these, microcosm communities of Cambridge. And even with all of the challenges around housing and costs in Cambridge, that you don't end up in a neighborhood and kind of only with other people in that neighborhood, but that we really knit ourselves together as a community. But again, that shouldn't mean that you're worried that one school is going to be better than another. Part of establishing upper schools was to try to address that issue by having a critical mass of students at each upper school coming in from feeder elementary schools before the high school, and so that we could provide more supports and more of a rich academic environment for everybody. But I don't think our upper schools, despite wonderful efforts from our educators and principals, I don't think our upper schools are there yet. I don't think we have the level of after-school activities and sports. I don't think we have the level of academic supports in each school that should be there. And so I think that's one part of that puzzle. And another part is we are kind of in between strategic plans for the district. The previous strategic plan concluded just as the term of the current school committee began. In January 2020, right, we were starting to have conversations about this. And then in March of 2020, of course, the pandemic came and we needed to really focus on that. And we certainly I think we're very clear on our overall goals for our students, but what we haven't had the opportunity to do until now is revisit and decide what measures are we going to use as our benchmarks and what are going to be our goals, and so that we can ensure that we're targeting, making sure that, for example, and I think this is one that I think will be part of it, I support this, every third grader should be reading at grade level. Mm-hmm. For example.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, anything less than 100%, is a failure on our part at that measure. But looking at what the measures are, because a lot of people say, I'm probably going to mess up the phrase, but basically, if you don't measure it, it doesn't happen. Or at least we can't be certain that It is where we want it to be.
Right. David, before we go to your closing statement in about 40 seconds, what are you most proud of in terms of your first term on school committee?
Well, I mean, it's been a uniquely challenging time for all of us. Yeah. In my first term, I've met with individuals and organizations throughout our city. I've been listening, I've been learning, I've been reflecting on how our schools can better live our ideals. And then I've been focused on taking action. And I'm proud of how my school committee colleagues and I worked together and with our children, families, educators, and administration to navigate this unprecedented time. and make hard decisions. And I'm proud of how I kept my focus on equity, anti-racism, opportunity, and support for every child throughout. And but there's much more to do. It's been a particularly steep learning curve with all that we face. But I do think that that's going to position me and any of my colleagues who are returning to be able to make even more progress as we hopefully fully exit the pandemic towards those goals of opportunity for everybody. And
great. Thank you, David. How about a closing statement, please, Mr. David Weinstein?
Well,
Weinstein,
yeah.
Weinstein, I apologize.
That's okay. Well, it's been an honor to serve Cambridge. And I think even particularly in this time when, people have been looking to the school committee to try to keep their children safe and well educated during this pandemic. And while nobody anticipated this when we were elected, as I say, I'm proud of what we accomplished as a team. But we are interdependent. To get through the pandemic and to achieve the results we want for all of our children, we're going to have to put all of our love, care, resources, wisdom, and focus into meeting the individual needs of every child and ensuring the well-being of everybody in our care. And that's my commitment to Cambridge, to keep working on that, to keep learning and growing in that work, and to keep that focus. And so I ask you to vote number 1 for David in November and work with me so Cambridge can achieve excellence, equity, and innovation for each and every child.
Thank you so much, David. And where can people find you if they want to make a large donation or even a small donation or even want to volunteer?
You can find me at www.votedavidweinstein.com. That has also my email address and phone number and all of that. So you can reach out in any way that you want.
Great. Thank you so much. David Weinstein, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, David. Good luck on the trail, and we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Thank you. I'll be knocking on your door soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.